Lewis and Matilda, if you want to come back down, because it's time where you have to interact, remember? The youngest person here said we have to interact now. So, questions, please. Come on. Yes? We got somebody who can run around with a microphone. Thank you. Wherever you want.
Right.
I'm afraid now to interact. I don't know.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, ça va?
Oh, hi.
Hey, je suis milléniaux aussi. Ma question pour vous, vous avez un petit ami? Just kidding.
Okay.
The question would be: I've been working in the display business for a very long time, and we've seen some of the technologies that like Team Lab or Moment Factory, a lot used in the big shopping malls. My question would be: there are a lot of pop art, pop culture involved in the display industry, but we don't see that much in the attraction industry. So do you think that there is a trend or there's a possibility that pop art
Second mic coming.
do you think there's a possibility?
Sorry. Amy can't hear you if you don't have a microphone. So.
So do you think there's a possibility that we're going to apply pop art or independent designers' work in the attraction industry, or do you foresee how long that will happen?
Who's
Well,
supposed to
I think that's happening already. I mean, when you look at the advent of Meow Wolf, certainly is exactly what you're talking about. I think that that's an experience that's happening more and more. And I also think as these technologies emerge, there's a much stronger opportunity for people in the fine arts from an experiential standpoint in terms of expanding what, as I mentioned earlier, expanding what is location-based entertainment. So Moment Factory is creating these experiences. We've got Meow Wolf, my team. I come from casting bronze and carving stone is my background, and everybody who's at our company is a fine artist. Our aspiration is actually to eventually find our way back into taking our creative superpower and applying it to the fine arts and also to a global message, in terms of trying to, this is going to sound crazy, but make nature a brand in an effort to save it.
I'm struggling, but I think whenever I think pop art, I think brands, I think cultural references, I think I don't know, a piece of art that everybody knows. So there is a barrier to being in a theme park and seeing artwork from an artist, a famous artist, or a brand that has nothing to do with this park. There's going to be that legal barrier, I guess, that won't allow people like millennials or everybody to connect with those touch points, with a poster, with whatever, something that's pop art. I hope in the future it will happen more, because as you walk through the alleys of a theme park and you see, I don't know, a poster that references Nike, this is what is moving you emotionally. So I hope, I don't know, we'll get more pop culture inside of parks, but there's the legal, I don't know, hustle that we need to work on, I guess.
Jamie, do you
Well, I think there's something that we're working a lot with too, and it's in the experiences that we're already creating to try to create these pop arts within the experiences, because obviously, certain experiences are better photographed, and most of the times when you see stuff shared on the internet, it's through a photograph. So it's taking something that is existing within our world and then rethinking how we design it, just to create these moments within that it's kind of like an art piece that someone's going to want to take a really cool photo in and share it on Instagram. So
I would say there's probably more and more pop-up dining experiences and 6-month lifespan theatrical immersive experiences happening now, which I think is actually, coming back to what you were saying, a bit more aimed at more of the millennial group. I'm not actually completely convinced rides are going to last 20 plus years anymore. Are you?
Well, I mean,
do
I
you see
think
that
too.
happening?
I think what is happening is we have the democratization of content. So there's an opportunity for this engagement where the users are creating the content. And I was just at Infocom speaking the other day about another thing that's really transcendent and relative to this is the complete change in manufacturing.
Yep.
So we're at this moment where we've all been a part of this mass market manufacturing process. And through the advent of 3D printing, these technology opportunities, now the guest, the designer, the home artist is able to bring his content in from Photoshop. He'll be able to create experiences and have a canvas for that. He'll be able to bring in a wrap for his car and manufactured. And we're going to see a complete transition away from mass market generation to micro production and the ability for these pieces of content or these pieces of media experiences to be democratized to the content generator and us being a platform to facilitate all of this creativity.
Sorry, you're making me think of something. If you're interested in that topic, there's a company called Hit Record, company by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's an actor. We through Ubisoft have been using that company to integrate within one of our games that we're building, Beyond Good and Evil. That's a big world, big game. There are billboards and places within the game where we'll see art pop up that is generated by players that are just going through the platform and then showing up at different times in different places of the game. And that's, I think, one way of integrating both art and actively engaging people to co-create the world.
Okay, very cool. Any more out front? Anybody?
No question.
No questions at all. Wow.
Should we just talk?
We can. I was just going to come back to this brand and IP piece, where now we're used to, and we actually all do it, as somebody who was there when the mobile phone arrived, let alone the internet, the way we communicate has completely changed, and we all have this piece now that we pre-select our own. I remember when computers came out and you couldn't change your desktop, you got what you got. And we can see it changing now, and back to your point for the smartphone is the new biggest piece of theme park expansion at Galaxy's Edge that's happened. It's very interactive with the mobile phone because of the scene needs and the technology that brings in. Do you think more and more that's going to be part of it? The way of customizing something that may be a much bigger experience allows you to, yes, design your own avatar, maybe bring it along. There's certainly people talking about that for rides, but actually be able to bring your brands in with you. I know there's
Well,
a
I think
issue.
there's a couple of facets to
Yeah.
that. First, is that branding and IP are different.
Yep.
There's intellectual property is a world building exercise in creating characters, content, backstory to those representatives, and then associating value structure to each of those characters and how they should react together within that content. Brand is a greater essence of essentially the rules of the universe that should guide the overarching content of what those IPs fulfill within. So, as I mentioned earlier, Disney is magic. Disney is magic with heart, and under that content, they represent things as family connection with that, and then their selections of creating Pixar, Lucasfilm, and their own brand under that element fit under that umbrella. Universal is a visceral brand. They're about being a part of the movies. You living that moment in the movies is what their brand essence is. And then the intellectual properties that they select to fit under this categorization, such as being aggressive, being visceral, being in your face, being edgy and exciting, then choose and associate intellectual properties that fulfill that obligation, like Fast and the Furious or Jaws, or from a more, really they're one brand that has emotional connection to the guest on a familial level is Harry Potter, which really transformed the whole company. Did I?
No, that was great.
I haven't seen Galaxy's Edge yet.
Not many people have it.
Yeah. You were one of the lucky few. But yeah, I definitely think that technology, whether it's smartphone or something else, are opening. It's like little windows that open into segue into the world that you're trying to build, and that was, as I was saying, people are gonna keep spending time on their smartphones anyway. The battle isn't against the tool; it's against who are they allocating the time for, and yeah, I think it's an opportunity. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but
I was going to say, do you, do you
back
still
to that was
see that as a group interaction or a single person interaction? If you're coming to a theme park,
yeah, I think it can be a group.
I think it has to be both.
Yeah.
And I think that I realize I didn't answer the question right before. So the reality is that I think there's an opportunity as these platforms evolve that there will be people who are social influencers or people who are particular to a brand story or some component to that through guest creation may enter that universe and be able through the dialogue to create content that will participate in those universes. So when you think about Star Trek or Star Wars or Harry Potter, there are these fans who know, if not as much, maybe more than some of the creators of the original content. So, like I've got a guy that I know that is a friend from the studio who learned to speak Klingon, and he got married and had a Klingon wedding. You know, that's not something I think Gene Roddenberry did, but it's an opportunity where if the licensing structure can be worked out with the parent company, then I think there's an opportunity that, through the democratization of content creation, that all of these people who are of fandom can participate in that. And you think about the energy that Comic-Con generates, you know, and the people who come and participate in that. You know, there hasn't been an opportunity yet from a platform standpoint to figure out how to engage those participants with the brand itself. I mean, they're observers, they have a fandom, they have a language, but there hasn't been a transcendent moment yet where they're creating the content in the overall distribution network. And I think we're nearing the point, especially with the millennial generation, that that's going to be a demand and that that's going to happen.
I have a comment to add to that. A great example of that is what Lego has done. When I worked for Lego back in the 90s, building Legoland Windsor and Legoland California, if you were a fan, if you were a builder, you couldn't get, you know, if you sent them a note and said, "Can I have 600 brown 4-stud bricks?" they'd just send it back. Like they wouldn't engage in any of that. And now at the Lego House, they have embraced AFOLs, which are adult fans of Lego, and they have exhibit space where they showcase the work of those AFOLs, which, you know, back in my day was something they were terrified of. I mean, really not interested in at all. So that's a different example of what you're talking about. I think we have another question here. Carlos?
Okay. This is I guess it's timely, but I think it's like bigger than TEA. So I'm just going to say, like, from the millennial perspective, because this is what sort of we touched on, but if you are a world citizen and your communities are global, and we as governments and nations are going inwards and becoming more nationalistic, how maybe will that affect both, you know, international firms that are trying to be global as well, but then preserving cultures and, again, saving their own planets and their own countries and their own cities? Like, do you see what I'm getting at, I guess, a little bit? It's like, there's a lot going on here. And politics in particular, geopolitical, is kind of like non-participatory, meaning there's fewer and fewer people voting, and then when they do vote, it's usually the older folks, which are non-millennials, and they're voting to say, let's keep us apart, where you guys are all trying to get closer and closer together. So there's a lot going on there, but I apologize.
Thank you for the political question. I'm a bit of a radical. I think in the long term, I'm gonna drop a bomb. I don't think we'll have much borders in the very long term anymore. Just because we're exchanging already. Our cultures are mixed already. Our people are mixed. We're gonna have to find a way to I don't know, to kind of spread the work, because we have a big earth. But my hope is that as my generation grows up, we're gonna be less and less turning inwards and more accepting of. And that doesn't mean we have to wipe up every local culture. On the contrary, I think these are all options that we're gonna have to cultivate. So how do we cultivate them? Whose responsibility is it to cultivate them? That's going to be another question. But the hope and I don't know, my perspective on it is that it's going to be less and less of we're going to be more open. We're going to be one single, I think.
Yeah, if I can add to that. I mean, I think regardless of political persuasion, scientifically proven at the moment, we are all living during the 5th greatest extinction on this planet. And that's like serious shit. And it's not on the news. We're not addressing it. And everybody in this room has a skill set that reaches millions of people. We have an opportunity and an obligation, I think, to use our creative element to influence people of the world to make a difference. My daughter is going to grow up in this world that likely is going to experience dramatic cultural change. It's going to experience dramatic political change because as people don't have water, they don't have the ability to grow things. It's going to create a transition to all political rule and everything that we understand from a societal standpoint today. And that's kind of where I was talking about nature before. You know, people care more about Disney and Coca-Cola than they do that this extinction thing is happening. So what we have to do is we have to figure out a way to create a positive message about the positive economy, positive job creation, positive employment around this ability to change our environment. And we can do that through the medium of entertainment to make a difference in the world and a positive influence on people's lives and not shaming them through the process. And I think that the millennial generation has a more forward perspective on that. And hopefully we can influence change in a positive way to bring that meaningful difference about.
And with that, we're out of time.
Powerful.
Thank you, guys.
That was great.